In 1932, a country declared war, deployed its military, opened fire with machine guns, and lost. Not to another army, not to a rebellion, to birds. 20,000 of them. And by the time it was over, the kill count was so embarrassingly low, the government tried to bury the whole story. This actually occurred. Real soldiers, real machine guns, real military orders, signed by an actual government minister. Here's exactly how a modern army lost a war against an animal that can't even fly. After the First World War, the Australian government needed to do something with thousands of returning soldiers. The solution seems simple. Give them land. Specifically, give them land in Western Australia and turn them into wheat farmers. Over 5,000 veterans took up the offer, settling into a region that promised a fresh start after the horror of the trenches. But the land didn't cooperate. The soil was poor. The rainfall was inconsistent. Many of these new farmers were already struggling just to break even. Then in 1932, a severe drought hit, and that drought pushed nearly 20,000 emus inland, out of their usual habitat, straight into the wheat fields these struggling veterans depended on. Emus are not small animals. They stand close to 6 feet tall. Their strides cover more than 3 feet at a time. And once they discovered the wheat, they didn't just eat it. They broke through fences to get to it, which let rabbits and other pests flood in right behind them. For farmers already on the edge, this was the breaking point. These were former soldiers. They knew exactly one tool that had stopped large advancing groups before, and in their minds, an advancing wall of emus wasn't so different from an advancing line of infantry. They petitioned the government for machine guns, and remarkably, the government agreed. The Minister of Defense at the time, Sir George Pearce, approved the request. The Australian military would be deployed against a bird. Officially, the mission had 2 goals: protect the crops and collect emu feathers, which were needed for the ceremonial hats worn by the light horse regiments. On November 2, 1932, Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery arrived in Western Australia with 2 soldiers, 2 Lewis light machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. A cinematographer was even sent along to film what everyone assumed would be a quick, decisive victory. The first encounter seemed promising. The soldiers found a group of around 50 emus and managed to kill several before the rest scattered. Then 2 days later, they encountered a much larger group, nearly 1,000 emus heading directly toward an ambush point near a dam. Major Meredith reportedly waited until the birds were close enough to see clearly before giving the order to fire. This should have been the moment of total dominance. Instead, the machine gun jammed after only 12 birds went down. While the soldiers fought with their own weapon, the emus simply ran. Emus, despite their size, can sprint at speeds up to 35 miles per hour. They didn't bunch together in neat, vulnerable lines like the soldiers expected. They scattered into small, fast, unpredictable groups, darting between trees, changing direction without warning. Soldiers later reported something even stranger. Each group of emus seemed to have a lookout, a single bird that watched for danger, and the moment it spotted the soldiers, it would signal the rest of the group to scatter before a single shot was fired. Desperate for a better angle, the soldiers even tried mounting a machine gun onto the back of a truck, hoping to chase the emus down instead of waiting for them to approach. The truck couldn't handle the terrain. It lost control during the chase, and the gunner was thrown around so violently he couldn't fire a single accurate shot. The emus, once again, simply ran off into the scrub. Within a week, after using over 2,500 rounds of ammunition, the military had killed approximately 200 emus, out of an estimated population of 20,000. Australian newspapers picked up the story, and the tone shifted quickly from concern to ridicule. Members of parliament started joking that the emus deserved military medals. One politician suggested that if anyone should receive honors for the campaign, it should be the emus, since they had won every round so far. Embarrassed by the growing international press attention, the government suspended the operation on November 8th. But the emus didn't stop eating the wheat just because the cameras went away. Within 4 days, farmer protests grew loud enough that the government reluctantly resumed the operation on November 12th. This second phase ran for nearly a month, through December 10th. The kill rate hovered around 100 emus a week, professional artillerymen with military-grade machine guns, killing roughly 14 birds a day. By the time the operation officially ended, the most generous estimates put the total emu casualties at under 1,000. Some sources suggest as few as 200. Compare that to the original population of 20,000, and you can see exactly how this campaign actually went. The Australian government never officially called it a war, but everyone watching it unfold saw exactly what it looked like. A modern army, fresh from the lessons of an actual world war, completely outmaneuvered by a flightless bird. So how did the emu problem actually get solved? Not with bigger guns, not with more soldiers. 2 years later, in 1934, the government introduced a bounty system instead, paying farmers directly for every emu they killed using their own methods. No military involved. Emus kept migrating into the region every breeding season, and over just 6 months, farmers claimed roughly 57,000 bounties. And alongside that, something even simpler worked even better. Fencing. Long stretches of exclusion fencing built specifically to keep emus out of farmland in the first place. The military's high-powered intervention achieved almost nothing. The actual fix was decentralized, low-tech, and handled by the same farmers who had asked for machine guns in the first place. In 1932, a country went to war with the only tool it knew, and lost, to birds. The soldiers weren't incompetent, the weapons weren't faulty, the strategy simply didn't transfer. Sometimes the right response to a real problem isn't more force. It's a completely different kind of solution, one you'd never reach by reaching for the same tool twice.